All right, why don't we go ahead and jump right in. My name is Paulina, and ask the rest of my team to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Somto.
I'm Jack.
And we're members of the Creative Computing Lab at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Today, we're so excited to talk about our new project, BlockTalk. So BlockTalk is a new platform for conversational simulations to practice debugging Scratch programs. I know it's an exciting and full day with many wonderful Scratch conference sessions. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. In the chat, we've asked you to introduce yourselves and share something that you're excited about. Feel free to keep responding to that in the chat. So let me tell you a little bit about our workshop. So our workshop today is in 3 parts. First, we'll talk a little bit about how BlockTalk works. Then we'll do a live demo of BlockTalk. And then afterwards, we'll do some reflection on the experience together. And as we talk, feel free to use the chat, as you are already beautifully demonstrating, to add comments or questions. And if you have a specific question for us, we suggest using the Q&A function. And Somto and Jack will be monitoring both places. So BlockTalk is a platform to practice debugging common problems in student projects through interactive conversational simulations. When working with students, you may find that students come to you with specific questions about their Scratch projects. As a teacher, you're often trying to understand the student's question, figure out the solution to their issue, and help them learn to keep going on their own without relying on you to give them the answer. On BlockTalk, we have designed 10 interactive simulations. Each simulation is designed around a common challenge that students experience when creating Scratch projects. In each simulation, an AI student is working on a specific Scratch project, but their project is not working. You can talk to the AI student about their Scratch project and what problems they are experiencing. When interacting with the BlockTalk AI student, there are many different things you might say. So you could ask questions such as, what are you working on? Or can you explain your code to me? You could take a closer look at their code by asking, can you show me your code? You could offer suggestions such as, what if you tried looking in the events block category? Before we get into the demo, let's walk through what a BlockTalk interaction looks like. So on BlockTalk, you'll go to our new website, and then you'll click the sign up button to make an account. Once you have made an account, you can start engaging with the conversational simulations. You'll need to start with the first one, Margaret's Dinosaur Dilemma, to understand more about how the chat interface works. When you click Start Simulation, you'll go to a new page that contains a lot of information about how the simulation works. So this page offers some suggestions about what to try in the chat, as well as a preview of Margaret's Scratch project. The Scratch projects that are included in the simulations are there as a reference for you as you engage with the simulation, but the AI cannot see changes you make to the Scratch project. When you're ready to begin the simulation, you'll enter the chat interface. And on the left side is the chat, and on the right are your reference materials, such as the Scratch project and the Scratch project's code, as well as additional controls. You can go back to the instructions. At the bottom is a text input field where you can put in your responses to the chatbot. And if you want to restart your chat, you can click Restart Conversation anytime. All of your chats are stored, so if you want to go back to see a particular response, you can do that in your account. And when you've completed the simulation, or if you're feeling stuck and need some help, we recommend checking out the Learn More page. The Learn More page offers more information about the challenges that students encounter, as well as multiple possible approaches to address the AI student's problem. There are also links to resources that you can use with your students if you notice that this is a challenge that they are experiencing. Okay, so in a moment, yes, BlockTalk is free. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Brian to take us through a live demo of BlockTalk. Before we do, just a little bit of a disclaimer. So we are still developing BlockTalk. It's very much a work in progress. So there might be some unexpected bugs. BlockTalk, it runs on OpenAI GPT-4o. And so as with any generative AI tool, there might be bugs and hallucinations. This could look like incorrect scratch code or incorrect understandings of computational concepts. And we have not scripted responses for the AI students. So we are really excited to learn more about how the AI students will respond to your questions and strategies for talking to students. Okay, so now I'm going to turn things over to Brian to take us through a live demo of BlockTalk. Brian, let's do it.
All right, yeah, so there's a link here that Paulina has that can take you directly to BlockTalk itself if you'd like to try it out. But Paulina is also going to be sharing what the website looks like. And what I thought we'd do is try it together so you can get a feel for how it works and what the experience is like with interacting with these simulations in order to get practice debugging with Scratch. So when you go to the URL for BlockTalk, this is what you'll see. Welcome to BlockTalk. And if you scroll down beneath the introductory video, which covers a lot of the information that Paulina just talked about, you'll see this sign up button. So Paulina, if you could click on that. This is the registration form. You'll just sign up with an email address and a password. And then we ask you a few questions just about your experience teaching and working with Scratch.
One moment while I fill this in.
No problem. BlockTalk is designed as a tool for teachers, so we do ask you to confirm that you're over 18. We're asking you about the types of learners you work with, how long you've been teaching computing, and how long you've been working with Scratch. So once you've registered for an account, on the homepage, you can scroll down to the section that says Conversational Simulations, and there you'll see all of the different simulations that we've created for practicing debugging with Scratch. The first one is meant as a tutorial of sorts, just to get you familiar with the interface and how BlockTalk works, and that one is called Margaret's Dinosaur Dilemma. So on Margaret's Dinosaur Dilemma, we can go ahead and click on Start Simulation. There's a question. So each student would need to sign on. This tool is a tool designed for teachers more so than it is as a tool for students. It's meant for you as a teacher to practice debugging strategies, to see the types of problems that students might run into. These simulations are all built based on research we've conducted and that we've read from others in the literature about common challenges that students have run into when learning Scratch and learning computing for the first time. And so this is meant as a teacher-facing tool. And so when you click on Margaret's Dinosaur Dilemma, our tutorial stage, this is what you'll see, some information just setting up this scenario for you. And so we'll see that you are acting as Margaret's teacher. You can see Margaret's Scratch project here on the right-hand side. We can click on the green flag to try Margaret's project. In Margaret's instructions on the right side, it says that we should click the green flag and see the dinosaur roaring. Paulina, if you click the green flag, does the dinosaur roar?
It does not.
It does not roar. Okay, so it seems like something is wrong with Margaret's project and we'll need to help Margaret with it. So on the next page, once we click the I'm ready to help Margaret button, what we're going to see is a conversation with Margaret, this AI student that's running into this challenge, and she's struggling to get her dinosaur to roar. And so in that white box, we're seeing the first message from Margaret. She's a student in our class. She wants to make her dinosaur roar, but nothing seems to be happening when she clicks on the green flag. Can we help her figure out why it's not working? And so on the right, we can see her project. We can also see a link to the Scratch website if we wanted to look at the Scratch code, try out her project. And Jack has very helpfully shared a link to Margaret's Scratch project in the chat. So if you'd like to take a look at Margaret's project, in fact, maybe let's do that. Why don't we take a look at the Scratch project on the Scratch website first? And if everyone wants to take a look at it, let me know in the chat. What do you think has gone wrong here? We've left a few hints in the comments of the project too. But what would you tell this student if they're trying to get their dinosaur to roar, but whenever they start the project, the dinosaur doesn't seem to be roaring? Yeah, I'm seeing some great responses in the chat. It looks like there's something that needs to trigger this code to run. Event-driven programming, I'm seeing. We need to say when this code is supposed to happen. So a lot of great suggestions. It seems like we've identified that something seems to be missing here. And now that we have a sense for what might be wrong, why don't we head back to BlockTalk and continue this conversation with Margaret. Yeah, this is a really common problem that I see students run into when learning to program with Scratch. They want to make something happen, they drag out the say something or speak something aloud, play a sound, and they press the green flag and nothing seems to happen. So now envision yourself as a teacher working with this student. Your student has said this to you. What would you reply to them? So we know what the problem is, but how would you try to communicate this to a student? What would you ask them? What would you tell them? What would you try to get them to think about? And if we could, I'd love some suggestions. If you could type into the chat what message you would suggest that we send back to Margaret in this situation. Yeah, I love this first suggestion. How does your program know when to start roaring? Paulina, why don't we try asking that and see what Margaret says? So we've asked the question, and now Margaret's replying to us. Margaret says, I guess it doesn't really know when to start. Maybe I need to add something that tells it to start when I click the green flag. What do we think about that? How would we respond to this message from Margaret? See a few suggestions. I'll wait and let a few other people try how you would articulate this. There's not necessarily one correct answer to any of these scenarios and simulations. They're really designed to see how you'd interact with a student. Yeah, a lot of great questions that I'm seeing about do you see a block that uses the green flag? How would you go about making that happen? Do you want to look in the event category for a flag suggesting the student where to look? Let's try one of those. Why don't we try, do you see a block that uses the green flag? Margaret seems to know she wants something to happen when she clicks the green flag. So does she see a block that does that? Margaret says, oh yeah, I see a block that says when green flag clicks, should I put that at the beginning of my code? Paulina, why don't we say, yes, that sounds good to that. All right, so Margaret has added the code to the beginning. One nice feature of BlockTalk is that the student has the ability to show and talk about Scratch blocks specifically. So if we wanted to confirm, we could ask Margaret to see if we could see what her code looks like now. And so Margaret's going to reply to us and show us what her code now looks like. And they'll render as Scratch blocks, so we can see exactly what those Scratch blocks look like. And now it seems like we've got these blocks, switch the costume, say roar, switch back, but they're all after that when flag click block. And so now that looks to me like it should work. So let's tell Margaret that. All right, so Margaret solved her problem. She said thank you. Thank you for the suggestion in the chat for that message. And that was our conversation. So we've talked to Margaret, figured out what her problem is, had a conversation about how to solve it. And now that we're done, there's a button in the bottom right that you'll see that says Learn More. And we can click on Learn More just to learn more about this particular simulation, to see what the issue was, the types of challenges that students might run into, and different possible approaches. These all have multiple possible solutions. And so we can see what are the different ways that we might solve this problem, all based around this idea of event-driven programming. So we could talk to Margaret about what she wants to trigger the roar. Is it pressing the green flag, or is it clicking on the dinosaur, or is it pressing the space key? So different possible ways that we might go about working with this particular student and this particular problem. At the end, we provided you with some links that can link to additional resources that can be helpful for the concept that this student was struggling with. You have a couple options at the bottom. We can chat with Margaret again. If you'd like to try again, try a different approach, try asking different questions, try a different sort of conversation. Or if we'd like, we can chat with another student. But before we do that, I'll pause and see if there are any questions that people have about the simulation, about BlockTalk, and about anything we've seen so far. Is this on Google Chromebooks? BlockTalk runs entirely as a web application in the browser. So whether it's Chrome or some other browser, you'll be able to access and interact with BlockTalk. All right, so that was the tutorial simulation, just to give you a sense for how the chat interface works, what it's like to communicate with a student in BlockTalk. So what I thought we'd do is maybe try one or two other simulations, just to get a sense for what else we might do. Does anyone have a suggestion? Does any of these particularly stand out to you as one you might like to try? Is it free? Yes, it's free. So we've got 10 other simulations we can choose from, all different common challenges that students run into when working with Scratch. What should we try next? I see a few requests for the marshmallow simulation and for the dress up game. Why don't we do the marshmallow simulation, since there seems to be a lot of interest in that one? Yes, and definitely feel free to use the Q&A for questions in the chat. All right, so here's our next simulation, Kimberly's marshmallow simulator. It seems like we're in the mood for marshmallows today. So we're Kimberly's teacher. Kimberly's a student in our class, and she's talking about her Scratch project. When the marshmallow moves closer to the fire, it's supposed to change costume, but it never does. Can you help me figure out why it's not working? So we can see Kimberly's Scratch project to the right here. Cook a marshmallow by moving your mouse closer to the fire, but make sure not to burn it. All right, so why don't we move the mouse closer to the fire? And marshmallow is right over the fire, but it doesn't seem to be burning, which maybe it's supposed to. That's my guess as to what the problem might be. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem might be and how we might help Kimberly. So there's a link to view the code on the Scratch website. Jack, thank you, has shared a link to Kimberly's Scratch project in the chat. And so why don't we all take a moment, take a look at Kimberly's Scratch code. We know what Kimberly would like to have this project do, but she seems to be getting stuck. And if you have ideas for what might be going wrong, send a message in the chat. There's a suggestion to change the equal sign to a less than or equal sign. That's an interesting one. Why would we change equal sign to less than or equal sign, out of curiosity? Yeah, so there's a suggestion that if it's not that exact distance, then it won't trigger the costume change. That if the distance is like slightly more, slightly less, then the wait until might not work as expected. So all some interesting thoughts in the chat now. Why don't we talk to Kimberly and see if we can help her solve her problem. There's a question about broadcasting the start. In the code, you might have noticed that the code that's checking for whether the distance is equal to a particular value happens when you receive the start event. It wasn't in that particular block, but if you look in other parts of the blocks, there is a broadcast there, and I think a few people have found that. So what do we want to say to Kimberly first? So Kimberly says, when the marshmallow moves closer to the fire, it's supposed to change costumes, but it never does. Can we help her? Remember, Kimberly is your student in your class, and we're just trying to practice helping her debug and helping her figure out how to get unstuck with her project. Yeah, someone asked, how close does it need to be? I like the idea of just asking questions about the project, asking Kimberly to tell us a little bit more about what she's trying to do with her project and how she wants it to work. All right, so it needs to be 250 at first, then 200, then 175. We think it's supposed to change costumes, but it just doesn't do anything. At this point, if I'm working with a student and they're talking to me about their project, I might ask to see the code that they've written so far. So why don't we ask Kimberly that? Can you show me what code you've written? All right, so we can take a look at this code. This is the same code that we just saw reproduced in the Scratch website from a moment ago. And it seems like the switch costume to costume one part, that seems to be working, but these like next costumes aren't triggering. We're doing like wait until distance to fire is 250, wait until distance to fire is 200, and then wait until distance to fire equals 175. And there were a few comments in the chat that highlighted on the fact that this like equality comparison might be causing part of the problem here, that we're saying if the distance to the fire equals 250, then or wait until that happens and then do something. But what if the distance is like 251 and then it jumps to 249 and something like that might happen? I asked Kimberly to look at the greater than and less than options, and it seemed to work out. Yeah, so something about this equality check maybe is not quite right. So what might we ask? What might we say? What might we suggest? Any thoughts on what to reply next to Kimberly in this conversation? Sure. Does it need to be exact distances? Seems like a reasonable question to ask. We're checking for exactly a distance of 250 and exactly a distance of 200. And that might be something useful to get Kimberly thinking about. Maybe not. Do we think that's why it's not working? What do we think? Again, if you have a suggestion for what to say next, what would you say to the student? Let us know in the chat. We'd love to see some more ideas. Yeah, there's a suggestion about using less than or greater than, so let's ask that and see what Kimberly says. So this is a fair follow-up question. Which should we use, less than or more than? What do we think? We might answer the question. We might ask a follow-up question. Yeah, yeah, we could just say less than makes sense, and maybe someone asked her to think about it instead of giving her the options. Why don't we ask Kimberly, what do you think? Which do you think makes the most sense? Yeah, so this demonstrates some of the different ways that you might interact with BlockTalk. You can provide an answer to a question, but it can also be helpful to ask a follow-up question to see how the student responds to the follow-up question, to get the student thinking along the right lines, but to let them come up with the solution on their own. So if the distance is less than 250, it should switch costumes, and that makes sense to me. So why don't we let Kimberly know she's on the right track. So Kimberly's going to try it. She's showing us her code just so we can get a chance to see it as well. And it looks like she's replaced all of the equal signs with less than. Notice now that distance to fire is less than 250 and distance to fire is less than 200 and less than 175. So that looks good to me. So why don't we tell Kimberly that looks good, and she should try it. All right, so Kimberly got our project working. She says thank you. So that was a bit more of a complex challenge that a student might run into. The answer wasn't quite as obvious because there's a lot more code across many more different sprites. And so at any point, if you needed help or you weren't sure about it, we could have tried some different things. But I see, Paulina, did you? Oh, that's okay. Yeah,
I was going to show the working code. So we could
we can do that. Yeah, that could be fun, just to see it working. So if we replace distance to fire equals with distance to fire less than 250, and we'll have to do that for 200 and 175 as well.
Is that correct? I realized I moved them all out and then.
That looks good to me. Let's give it a try and see what happens.
Let's see.
All right, now I think we
burnt the
marshmallow. But I think the project is working. So the marshmallow was burnt. I think we did a good job here. And so the Learn More page you can look at after you've completed your first conversation with the student, or if you get stuck, you can look at it as you're working with communicating with the student too. And here you can see some different possible approaches. And so possible approaches, one of the approaches was that less than that we looked at. Another possibility is defining your own block in order to add a little bit more abstraction to the code. So that's another possibility too. And we can see other ways of trying to solve the problem as well.
We have time for one more. I wonder about trying one without looking at the Scratch project, because sometimes a student emails you and they're like, something is not working, and you have no access to their project.
Sure. Paulina, did you have a project you wanted to try?
I did not have one in mind. Curious if other people. I think I saw some requests for the dress-up game.
Sure. Why don't we try the dress-up game? All right. So we have Jeanette's dress-up game, and why don't we try the project? Let's help him get dressed for his performance. There's a mask, a top, and dress him up. Bottom and the mask. All right. That looked okay to me, but Jeanette is saying the mask animation isn't working right. So it seems like we should try and figure out what Jeanette thinks isn't working. Suggestions on things to ask. What would you say? Yeah, what do you want to happen? What do you want it to do? Those all sound like great things to ask, just to find out what the goal is here. I want the mask to yell 3 times, make faces several times, and then dance when I click the done button, but it doesn't dance. Okay, so something seems to be not working as expected. Why don't we ask to see the code for the dancing? All right, so it's all just in this one piece of code, and so Jeanette has shared the part of the code that seems to be the issue. What do we think? There are a few suggestions for the start sound being in a repeat and needing a pause of some kind, and so that might be something that could be helpful. So there are a few different suggestions for possible things that could be wrong here. Oh, I think, yeah, this most recent message, not sure the forever will resolve. The forever is inside a repeat. That does also strike me as something that might not work here in this project, because we do see this dance block at the very end. And so if the sprite isn't dancing, maybe something is preventing it from getting to that dance block. 3 times infinity is a long time to wait. Yes, indeed it is. Why don't we, yeah, say something to suggest about that? Any suggestions for how to guide Jeanette in the right direction? Yeah, when does the forever loop stop? Why don't we ask that? It's going forever, it just keeps going, doesn't stop. Maybe that's why it's not getting to the dancing part. Yeah, so that scene does seem to be what the issue is. Perpetual motion, it's just never getting to the dance block. So what if we ask Jeanette to get rid of the forever block? Right, so Paulina's suggesting that maybe, or the student's suggesting that maybe that forever loop should go somewhere else. If you do want it to dance forever, maybe the dance code should go inside the forever loop. Yeah, that could be a suggestion too. Then it would just never stop dancing. So depending on what Jeanette wants, there might be multiple reasonable solutions to the problem. So Paulina, do you maybe want to wrap up the conversation and then we can do a little bit of reflection on BlockTalk?
Sounds good. Well, thank you all so much for going on this journey with us as we try things out. Live demos, you never know what will happen. We're going to switch gears and move towards a Padlet. So this is the link to the Padlet, which Samto is going to drop into the chat. So I know it was just a brief preview, though I think some of you were already hanging out with the AI students on BlockTalk on your own. But on this Padlet, Samto, did you put the link in the chat? Yes, thank you. Okay, so on this Padlet, we've got a couple of questions that we're just going to take a couple minutes to do some written thinking about. And then afterwards, we would love to invite some folks to come and share their audio, video, and chat a little bit with us about what you like, what you notice. But we'll just take a couple minutes. What are your favorite strategies for helping students debug projects? What surprised you about BlockTalk? And what advice or suggestions do you have for us as we develop BlockTalk? And the Padlet is moderated, so even though you click publish, it may take a moment for Samto and Jack to approve. I also saw a question in the Q&A from Tim about student work not being loaded into BlockTalk. So none of the projects, as some of you have mentioned, they look realistic. None of the projects that you can see in this in BlockTalk are real, but they are based off of projects that from kids that we've worked with in the past and creative challenges and conceptual challenges that we've seen. So Samto and Jack built all of the Scratch projects. And we'll just take another couple minutes. If you finished your thoughts, feel free to heart other people's comments or add a comment to someone's post. I didn't even know you could add images, but I love a giant green check mark. And I really love all of these different strategies for helping students debug projects. Different ways to ask questions. Trying to use wait blocks to slow the code down so you can really see where the problems occur. Sometimes I like to use say blocks that way too, kind of like a print statement. Do you know which part of it isn't working? Okay, so I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I thought we would just take a little brief moment for reflection. Thank you so much, Brian, for demoing how BlockTalk works. So I would be curious about things y'all noticed, things you're excited about, questions you have for us. We're happy to chat about all things BlockTalk or debugging Scratch projects. If you're interested in sharing your audio and video incoming, you can also, of course, put stuff in the chat. You're just going to have to click the button to share audio and video, and I believe that will send us a request. Glad we're excited about it, Jason. Also good to see you. I don't think you would have to get this licensed by the school board. It is loosely ready to use in that it is public on the website. We haven't formally launched it. We're still going through some debugging and testing of it. But yeah, you have the link, so you're welcome to make an account and try stuff out. And there's also a little feedback form on the website, so if you would like to share. We love any and all feedback. We are always trying to break it to see what else we can do to make it better. Would anyone like to share? Maybe if you were using BlockTalk during Brian's demo, you're welcome to come and share your conversation. Samto and Jack, anything you saw that surprised you? As people who have been rigorously testing BlockTalk for months.
I think I was most excited and surprised by some of the different suggestions that we saw in the chat, because as you said, like, we made the simulation, so we know what our intended bug is, and we kind of thought of at least 3 to 4 possible approaches. But I really love some of the suggestions in the chat, especially in the dress-up game. Oh, what if you want to dance forever, move it into the forever loop? Because as I designed it, I was thinking, oh, get rid of the forever loop. But I really love some of, especially I think the additive suggestions where you take code that the student already has and you tell them, well, let's keep going with this and maybe rework it so it can still do what you want versus, deleting everything that they had. So I was just really impressed with the different ways and strategies and ideas people had to solve the problems.
Yeah, I sort of on that topic, I thought it was really cool how, well, I guess we, first of all, we came up with the alternative solutions, just trying to brainstorm a few, how a student might approach it. And it was really cool to see people in the chat mention these alternate solutions, but also give additional solutions that honestly we haven't even thought of before. And it just, I think it really reflects the diversity of approaches that you can take on Scratch.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to solve students' problems on Scratch. And also, sometimes you talk to a student and they suddenly make a decision about how they would like to change how their project works, which I think can sometimes be similar to how the generative AI just kind of goes off in its own direction. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was a possible direction.
I do appreciate this comment in the chat about generative AI and the ways in which BlockTalk uses AI, because I think a lot of our work on BlockTalk was born from our curiosity about possible ways of using artificial intelligence and what it might mean for teachers. And I think with large language models like ChatGPT, we often use AI solely as a place to try to get answers. And here with the work we're doing on BlockTalk is an attempt to do something a little bit different with it. And we are the ones now giving the AI student the answer and seeing how they respond and using it as a means of practicing conversation, because in the end, that's one of the things that these conversational AIs are quite good at, is having a back and forth, having a realistic conversation with you.
I also appreciate Kai's note in the chat about how debugging student projects can be a scary thing. And I think even now, I'm always surprised by how hard it is to read other people's code. Like, even looking at the simulation, when you build the project, you're like, oh, everything makes sense, so straightforward. And then when you look at somebody else's project, it's like, oh, like other folks are saying, where's the broadcast for this? Like, I see the one I received, or like, where's this thing, or how does that work? So you get a little peek into somebody else's thought process, and it can be hard to figure that out.
How can you use the tool? If you go to the website, and Santo or Jack, if you could paste a link to the website again, just so everyone has it, you'll be able to register for an account. Anyone can register, and then you'll see the list of simulations that we've put together. The first one, the Margaret's Dinosaur Dilemma, you'll go through just as a introduction to the platform, getting used to the chat interface. But once you've done that one, you'll have access to all of the remaining simulations, and you can try them out. Each one of them is based on some different ideas, different types of projects, different computational concepts that we've seen students struggle with in the past, and that we hope might be helpful to get some practice with.
Yeah, I love the idea of this being used for students, trying to help younger learners. I think even now, it's a struggle to not just like take over somebody's computer and just show them what to do. And when I first started using BlockTalk, I found it difficult to be like, oh, I have to write out exactly which block, or like figure out what the suggestions are. I did see a note in the Padlet like, oh, it'd be great if it did text to speech. That is definitely on the desired list from our beta testers.
I think the struggle of figuring out how to articulate or explain or work with the student is part of the reason why we've tried to make it very easy to try the same conversation again. In the working with a real student, you kind of get one shot when the student's struggling with their project, and that one interaction, you get one chance at it. And with these simulations, part of the hope is that you will use it as an opportunity to practice, and practicing repeatedly can often be helpful, just so you can experiment with different ways of doing things and try different things and see what works better for you.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes left in the session. If you've got questions for us, we're happy to hear them. Or a favorite debugging strategy you think everyone should know, this is your chance.
While we have so many of you here, I would like to ask, again, as Paulina and Brian have mentioned, Jack and I have spent a lot of time designing these simulations, but for the future of BlockTalk, maybe we'll do more, who knows. Are there any common scenarios or any common projects that you guys see in the classroom that we don't have yet on BlockTalk? We've received feedback about like dinosaurs, soccer. I know a lot of people wanted to try the cooking game. So what are some themes that students seem really excited about in the classroom that you guys see often?
I don't know that I know what a breakout type game is, Jennifer. If you've got links to examples, feel free to put them in the chat.
Like the Atari one?
Oh, okay.
It's like the one with the moving paddle, I think.
Mental health ideas, yeah, climate change, soccer stars. You know, from a design perspective, we've gone back and forth about how much to preview in the simulation about what the coding problem is. Like, is it about loops? Is it because when a student comes to you, they're not going to necessarily give you that information, and does it make it too easy? But I don't know. It's something we're really very much still figuring out. We do have some, what we call like bumpers on the system prompt. So this question about, is the AI regulated or filtered? We have definitely tried some questions to see if we can lead the AI off topic. And at first that was easy to do. Now I think it's hard to do, but you know, I'm going to copy this suggestion and put it into BlockTalk right now and see if it will proceed to talk like a pirate. So you could also try that and report back.
Yeah, and as Paulina mentioned, if you do try BlockTalk either today or in the future, we would definitely love to hear your feedback. We're very curious about how you use it, how you think it might be useful, what you would recommend about it. And so at the top of the BlockTalk website, there's a feedback button that will take you to a page where you can provide your feedback on it. And we're very curious. This is a very early tool, still in beta. We're still testing it with people and seeing what we should change and what people are finding useful and not useful with it. So very curious for feedback.
I love the idea of adding other devices like the camera function or microbit, more dance ensembles and instruments. I think our last simulation actually with the musical bubbles has some of that sound and animation syncing. You want to check that one out. And the suggestion around relation to cross-curricular topics is really interesting. Currently only available in English. So with AI, I feel like it might not be too difficult for us to offer a language toggle. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. If you've got other questions. Hi, Carmelo. Good to see you. Carmelo, I'm curious if you want to share a link to the conversation you had. The URL for the conversation is public. Or if you would like to come on stage and give us a little preview. I don't really know how to bring you on stage, but let me find your conversation. So I think this is Carmelo's conversation. So any conversation you all had, you can find it in your account with a list of your active and past conversations, or on the homepage underneath all the simulations. I love all your exclamation marks, Carmelo. Oh. Check mark I'm gonna hit. Carmelo, hello.
Hi. So good to see you.
Good Good to see you too.
I'm at the library. I was just like checking, like this project was like super interesting to me. And I see a lot of familiar and friendly faces. So I said, yeah, let me try this. Really impressive. Congrats.
Thank you. We're still figuring stuff out,
I particularly loved like even like the Scratch's head. I was imagining the scene of this kid kind of like like it seems very realistic as a interaction. And I did my facilitator's tricks. First I suggested just try it out, just click on the script and see what happens. And then the kid said that she wanted to add the green flag. So it was pretty straightforward as a facilitator, to say, okay, why don't you check? There should be a block like that. And then there is a question about, is it like an event um, or like, is it in the event category, the green flag? I'm like, I don't remember, because I want to signal that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I remember it's orange. Check it out. And then she finds it. I'm referring it as a person, but like
I know.
she finds she finds it, and then she already proposes like, should I add it on the top of the stack? Sure, try it out, right? I don't say, oh yes, this is already the solution. Try it. So it reminded me, how much this like interaction and continuous encouragement to try things is crucial to facilitation. But anyway, that was my way, and I was like wondering, I kind of was like, oh, I wish, like I had access to what other people are doing. And there's a way to share facilitation approaches in the way you share projects. Really interesting. So thank you for making it and for letting us try it out at the Scratch conference.
No, thank you. I think that's the next step. That's one of the reasons that the URLs for the conversations are currently public, because then it's like, oh, you can just share the URL. It's not intuitive, though, that's possible. And I think it can still be kind of difficult to read through the conversation. So yeah, that's, I think, the next layer of what we're trying to figure out.
Very exciting work.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And I leave the stage to you and other people.
Well, I think we're at time. So thank you for a beautiful wrap up. And good to see you, Carmelo. And thank you all so much for being here with us. As we mentioned, you can access BlockTalk already, and let us know what you think via the feedback tab. And still screen sharing. So here's our email. If you would like to reach out to us, we really, truly are happy to hear from you anytime. And if there's anything else that we can do at the Creative Computing Lab to support your work in teaching kids and teaching teachers, let us know. We are happy to keep building new resources for you all. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Scratch conference.
Thanks, everyone.